In today's video, we are going to be talking about the Drukhari Combo Patrol box. We are going to go over the rules, the points, the price, savings, and more. Basically everything you need to know about this particular box before buying it. And yeah, let's get into it. First up, a few key things. I have an entire playlist down in the pinned comment below that is covering Combo Patrol. You're going to find a ton of reviews updated for 10th edition and more videos on it. So if you're interested, definitely check that one out. If you want to see any particular Combo Patrol that I have not covered yet, drop a comment just so I know that there's interest there and that I should probably cover it a little bit earlier than I initially planned to. And last but not least, if you notice anything, if you're interested in any additional information, if you have questions about anything, especially if you're new, please do not hesitate to drop a comment and I'll gladly get back to you and answer any questions you might have. And of course, if you're interested in more Combo Patrol content, or maybe you're interested in Spearhead as well because you play Age of Sigmar, or if you're interested in boarding patrol content and all that good stuff, you're going to find a lot of that here on the channel. So if you're interested in new things, definitely consider subscribing so you get updated whenever I upload a new video. And yeah, just leave a thumbs up and comment to appease the algorithm gods. And with that, let's get into the meat of the video. So as always, we are going to start by talking a little bit about the lore. The Drukhari are a little bit of an interesting faction simply because they are probably one of the smaller Xenos factions out there. Even though they have their own book, their own rules, their own miniatures and so on, and even though their lore is quite vast, overall, the entire faction is a little bit lighter on lore, on rules, and on miniatures, especially lately. So there's not that much to talk about. They are nowhere near comparable to most Imperial factions as far as the books go and so on. So yeah, they are a little bit under the radar currently, and I'm really hoping that changes for 11th edition because I'm really hoping they are the big bad there. But for now, the origins are that the Drukhari are descendants of the Eldar or Craftworld's Eldar, and they have split from their kin following the catastrophic event known as the Fall, which gave birth to the Chaos God Slaanesh. This event has significantly shaped their culture and existence by pushing them towards a path of depravity to escape Slaanesh's grasp. And the important thing to understand here is that the Imperium, for example, travels the galaxy via the warp. The warp is obviously not safe at all. There are a ton of chaos demons in the warp. Obviously, also the Chaos Gods reside somewhere in there and so on. So the warp is definitely not safe. The Eldari build a webway, which is completely safe. They can travel in there and do whatever they want. And the Drukhari built their city of Komorra in there. Komorra was built within the webway and thus was kind of out of Slaanesh's grasp. Whenever the Eldari took part in debauchery in the trillions and billions, and yeah, that was kind of what gave birth to Slaanesh. And the Drukhari were kind of out of its grasp, but it kind of got them still. So what they need to do to kind of stave off Slaanesh is doing Slaanesh things, ironically, which is kind of funny. Then, as I said, there is Komorra the city. It's a massive city. Most people, or Eldari, should I say, or Drukhari, in there are backstabbing each other and so on. There's a lot of intrigue there and so on. If you want to check out what Komorra could look like and get a little bit of a better impression because it's a very difficult to visualize city, you should definitely check out the Rogue Trader video game. It doesn't do a perfect kind of depiction of Komorra and certainly doesn't show all the aspects of it, but just to visualize, it really helps if you have played that game. And as far as smaller details go, they have some societal structures in there. So the Cabals, for example, are the military and political factions. They're led by Archons. The Witches are gladiatorial warriors and entertainers. And the Homunculi Covens are masters of flesh crafting and torture. And all of these, if they want to and if they have an incentive to, can work together. And if they do, if they have an incentive to, the Drukhari are very, very scary. Furthermore, they obviously use the webway as a very safe and very fast means to get in and out of certain places on the galaxy map and to raid settlements and so on. Because if the Drukhari are one thing, they are kind of reminiscent of space pirates, I would say, and they are very, very squishy. Their models as well as their just general vehicles are very light, very fast. They are definitely 100% focused on speed and efficiency, and they do that masterfully. So whenever they raid settlements to get new slaves primarily, they're not that much interested in new technology because their technology is fairly advanced, and I doubt any Imperial settlement would randomly have better technology. They're mostly interested in slaves, so they can stave off Slanesh and torture them and so on. That's their main kind of resource they are after. And yeah, last but not least, obviously their technology is not that far away from the basic Eldari or Craftworld's technology, very far advanced. They have dark matter weapons, they can shoot mini black holes, they have all the options. They are basically the Craftworlds with a little bit of a different twist and spin. So yeah, the Drukhari can be summarized as space pirate elves that have kind of a BDSM style when it comes to their clothing and their armor sets. They have a lot of spikes and so on, a lot of leather and latex and so on. They're also into torture and slaves. Their entire purpose, currently at least, is to go on real space raids, jump in on an Imperial planet or any kind of planet, get slaves, torture them to stave off Slanesh for as long as humanly possible, and it is more or less their entire reason for being. That places them on the first place on most people's tier list when it comes to the most evil faction in Warhammer 40k, because you could definitely make at least a 20-minute video on how the Drukhari torture Imperial citizens they get, or any kind of citizens they get, and what they do with them. So I'm not going to expand on that here, but it's certainly one of the most evil things that you can do. So overall, the Drukhari are really cool. They're quick. They're smart as well. Most of their people, especially the Archons, especially the high-ranking people like Asturabel Vect, which is kind of the most important figure within the Drukhari, sadly doesn't have a model at all, but is basically the most important figure within the Drukhari. They're all incredibly smart beings. Even though they are only about, torture and so on, they are still politically smart. They are strong within Camorra and their own city. They have kind of connections and networks going on with the witches and the Homunculus Coven and so on. There's a lot of things going on within the Drukhari. But externally, their impact on the setting is literally just from time to time helping the craft worlds, because they're still all kind of space elves and they still want to help each other against Slanesh. And that's their only kind of positive trait that they have ever shown. And on the other side, their impact on the setting and on the worlds of Warhammer 40k is that they jump into real space, raid a settlement, take as many slaves as they can, jump back into Camorra, torture them, and so on. Rinse and repeat. I hope this gives you a slight idea on who the Drukhari are and what they do. They have their own purpose. There's a lot more complexity in there, as I said. This is just a short summary. You can find a lot more in-depth information on them in specific videos. There are some books for them, but I really recommend you at least give Rogue Trader a try, because I think it somewhat depicts the Drukhari as they should be depicted. They have given Camorra a decent kind of visual aesthetic and how it could look and so on, so definitely check that out. There are also some animations which show the Drukhari, but in there they are not represented very well. But you could still check it out just for the visual design. It works very well. So yeah, that's basically it on the lore. So if you're interested in learning about how the Drukhari play on the tabletop before maybe making a purchase or just to get a first impression on them, they are very lightly armored, they are very squishy, they die very quick, but they are very, very fast. Probably the fastest faction on the tabletop. They have incredible movement values on their vehicles, and even their infantry is moving 7 to 8 inches, where the average is 6. A lot of factions are just moving 5 inches. So yeah, they're exactly what you expect. Strike fast, die very quick, but if you're efficient with what you do, if you make use of cover, and if you know how to use your transports, because they're the most key part of any Drukhari army, you are going to win games. So the Drukhari, even though they are squishy, the games are still very fun. The games are not over by turn 2 or 3 anymore. That was the case a couple of editions ago. These days, I think even Drukhari games go on for a little bit longer and can even go the full 5 turns before you or your opponent is just going to be dead. So that's a very fun aspect of the current kind of Drukhari style of playing. Last but not least, we also got a fairly recent detachment for the Drukhari. It is obviously not going to have any impact on the combo patrol that we are going to talk about, but the Sky Splinter Assault is incredibly fun. So if you're ever going to kind of start the Drukhari, play a little bit of combo patrol, and transition over to 10th edition 40k at 1000 points, for example, you are in for a treat. because at that point you're going to be able to play Sky Splinter Assault, and it's one of the most fun detachments in all of 40k. It just makes the Drukhari so much better, so much more fun to play. And yeah, if you ever have the time, you should check it out. It's free in their PDF. It's going to be linked down in the pinned comment below as well. And yeah, it's just a lot of fun. And with that, we are going to be talking about the Combat Patrol Drukhari. This one is called the Blades of Torment and is one of my absolute favorite Combat Patrols out there. It is great when it comes to balance. It is finely tuned when it comes to just being able to play against any other Combat Patrol and have no problems at all. It is a flexible Combat Patrol. You're running 2 vehicles. One of them is a transport. You're running some infantry in there. Some of them shooty, some of them melee. As far as balancing goes, as far as internal kind of list building goes, and the flexibility of this Combat Patrol, it is unmatched in my opinion. It is not the strongest Combat Patrol out there, but as far as the fine-tuning goes, as far as the kind of flexibility of melee and range goes, as vehicles, anti-vehicle go, anti-infantry options, it is perfect in my book. It's just one of the greatest Combat Patrols, and even if you have no interest in kind of playing Drukhari at 1000 points or anything, I would definitely recommend you pick this one up just for Combat Patrol, just so you can maybe play it yourself or give it to a friend whenever they come over to introduce him to 40k. It's perfect for that. So what are you getting within the Blades of Torment? You're getting 1 Archon. This one is a fairly popular model these days. Now, sadly, the Sculpt is not that popular, but having one of these Archons is certainly not bad. Then you are getting 10 Kabalite Warriors. These are currently the bread and butter, not only for Drukhari as a whole, but also for the Sky Splinter Assault I talked about earlier. They're great. Assembling them, as you can see here, is probably not necessary. I would just equip them with all the different special weapons and give them all the special stuff, blast pistols and so on, and not care too much about what is required for this Combat Patrol, simply because no one cares. You have all the data sheets and the rules right in front of you, and however they are assembled doesn't matter. Then we have the Incubi. Incubi are the only reason why this Combat Patrol is probably not as strong as it could have been, because Incubi, as of 10th edition, have gotten a strong hit, and they are just not as strong as effective as they used to be. If those were the 9th edition Incubi, this Combat Patrol would probably be S tier in terms of power. And then we have the Raider, which is obviously meant to transport your Kabalite Warriors. Your Kabalite Warriors can all shoot out of it. They are fairly safe within it. And yeah, they can just drop out whenever you need to capture an objective, sticky it, and then move on. And last but not least, you have the Ravager. The Ravager is equipped with 2 Dark Lances, 1 Disintegrator Cannon, and has Blade Veins. This one is just great for taking out vehicles. 2 Dark Lances are definitely going to do the job. The Disintegrator Cannon on there is a little bit unfortunate, but it is what it is. I would just assemble it with all Dark Lances and call it a day. So overall, yeah, the list, there is literally nothing to complain about here. It is great. And if I had to throw out early predictions when it comes to the basically new Combat Patrol that the Drukhari are going to get within the next few months, I think that that one is going to be a straight downgrade from this one. I don't think they can reach the heights that this one is going to achieve. We're going to talk about the points in a little bit. We're going to talk about the savings, and you're going to know exactly what I'm talking about. So first up, we are going to talk about the data sheets. And first up, we have Archon Malevax. This one sadly just has a splinter pistol. I would definitely consider assembling this one with a blast pistol, but yeah, you know, your mileage may vary. As far as the base stat line goes, as I said, Drukhari are incredibly quick. Their basic infantry and their character choice and so on mostly have movement 8, which is kind of incredible. Still toughness 3, a 4-up save and a 2-up invulnerable save, but we're going to talk about the invulnerable save in a little bit. Then 4 wounds, a leadership of 6-up and an OC of 1, so a very impressive stat line for what it is. The splinter pistol, even though it's not my preferred choice, still has anti-infantry 3, assault, and the pistol keyword, so you have a lot of flexibility in there. Sadly, just 1 shot, which makes it kind of laughable, but yeah, it is what it is at AP0. And then the melee weapon is pretty decent, I think. The Huskblade has anti-infantry 3 up, so the strength value is more or less dismissible. You have 5 attacks, you're hitting on 2s, AP -2, damage 2. It's a Space Marine blender, and it's going to do a great job at that. And then we have the invulnerable save. You cannot reroll invulnerable saving throws made for this model. The first time an invulnerable saving throw made for this model is failed, until the end of battle, this model has no invulnerable saving throw. It was basically in 9th edition an item or a war gear choice that enabled them to have the 2-up invulnerable save now. It's just a rule, and it helps them from not dying immediately and quickly. But with all the additional rules you're getting, with -1 to hit from a stratagem, with a 5-up feel no pain from an enhancement, even though if you fail your invulnerable save very early into the game, your Archon is still not going to just die. There are barely any precision weapons in Combat Patrol, if any. And furthermore, as I said, you have a ton of options to protect him, so don't worry about it too much. Then we have our Incubi. Incubi, as I said, are one of the only reasons why this Combat Patrol is somewhat balanced, simply because Incubi are just not that great in 10th edition. And even if they receive a buff in regular Warhammer 40k 10th edition, this buff is probably not going to translate over to Combat Patrol, simply because Combat Patrol is its own rule set, and I don't know if they're ever intending to update any of it at all. So here we are. As far as their base stat line goes, they're pretty okay. At movement 7, toughness 3, they have a 3-up save, a 5-up invulnerable save, all that good stuff. Their leader choice, or their sergeant, basically, quote unquote, should I say, has 2 wounds, which is very important to keep in mind. As far as their weapons go, we have demi-claves and just dual blades, single or dual blades. And the regular ones, just one of them has a demi-glaive, which is the clave axe. So you have options there, 6 attacks or 3 attacks. Both of them are fine. And your regular guys all have a regular glaive, which is 3 attacks at strength 4, AP -2, damage 2. It's not a bad stat line at all, but, you know, just comparing them to 9th edition Incubi is weird, simply because 9th edition Incubi really hit hard, and these guys really have trouble getting there because strength 4 is usually not enough, especially once you're going to talk about, you know, Gravis units, you're going to talk about Adeptus Custodes, they are really going to struggle against them. Now, what they do have, though, is a special rule called Tormentors. This one reads that at the start of the fight phase, each enemy unit with an engagement range of 1 or more units with disability must take a battle shock test. And remember, whenever an opponent unit fails a battle shock test, you're getting a pain token, which in turn allows you to reroll your hit rolls, which is fairly important, especially maybe with these guys at some point, because, you know, weapon skill 3 is not bad at all, but you're going to roll those 1s and 2s, and being able to reroll that is certainly helpful. So overall, the Incubi are not horrible or anything, but they are definitely not as good as they once were. I think that using them in Combat Patrol is going to require a little bit of finesse. You have to choose their targets very carefully. And what you have to mostly pay attention to, though, is that, you know, you send them against units that are toughness 4 or toughness 3. Otherwise, they're just going to struggle. It is what it is. Next up, we have the Cabalite Warriors. They have our basic stat line, 8 movement, and so on, toughness 3. As far as their weapons go, you're getting a decent assortment of weapons. Not all of them are ideal. You're not getting any additional, for example, dark lances and so on. But you are getting a shredder, you are getting a splinter cannon, and you are getting the basic splinter rifles and pistols. I think those weapons are not bad at all. A little bit upset that they didn't decide to go with a dark lance in here, because you're definitely going to assemble all the special weapons for regular 40k, as I kind of told you earlier. So yeah, the weapons are okay. For just sitting in a raider and shooting at your opponent, they're going to do just fine, especially considering that there's a stratagem that is going to grant them sustained hits. They are going to do a lot of hurt. And considering that, it's fine, I guess. As far as their melee weapons go, you have one Sebrite with a melee weapon, which is very important because your Archon is going to somewhat care about getting into melee. So having at least one of them being able to have a strength 3, AP -1, damage 1 weapon with anti-infantry 3 up is going to matter at some point. So overall, the Cabalite Warriors loadout is pretty okay. There are some weapons missing here, but it's not too much of a problem considering how good the rest of their rules are. Then we have the Raider, which is the main transport for your Cabalite Warriors as well as an Archon. It can carry 11 Drukhari infantry models. Your Archon is going to attach to your Cabalite Warriors. Then you're going to shove them all into the Raider, and you're going to have a lot of fun. Because if you look at the abilities tab, it reads Deadly Demise D3, which basically means if it dies and you roll a 6, it blows up with D3 mortal wounds for everyone in a 6-inch radius, I think. And then you have Deep Strike, which means that you can just send them in from the back line if you wanted to. And then you have a firing deck of 11. That means all of the models inside the Raider can shoot out, which is very important to keep in mind. As far as Deep Strike go, I don't think it's worth it. You have a 14-inch movement you can get more or less anywhere on a small Combat Patrol board. So yeah, keeping 11 of your models together with a Raider with a disintegrator cannon off of the board just doesn't feel worth it. I would rather have them on the board and be shooting from turn 1 going forward, and that's definitely what I recommend. As far as the weapons go, as I said, it's a disintegrator cannon, nothing to really write home about. It has AP-2 and damage 2 and so on. But, you know, these days, Dark Lenses are just so popular that I would have preferred, obviously, to have a Dark Lens in here. But it is what it is. It's fine. And yeah, that's more or less it. Nothing really to talk about here. The Raider is going to be your basically key player in this particular list. It is going to keep your Cabalite Warriors alive. And it is going to allow you to drive across the board, score secondary objectives, and yeah, drop your Cabalite Warriors on objectives to sticky them and get them back in there. Last but not least, we have our Ravager. This is our anti-vehicle platform. This one has a 14-inch movement as well and is fairly tanky for Drukhari standards. Toughness 9, a 6-up invulnerable save, 4-up save, 11 wounds, and so on. It has Deep Strike as well, but you know, as with the Raider, I would technically prefer having it on the board turn 1 90% of the time, simply because, as I said, 14-inch movement and having those Dark Lenses there on turn 1 and being able to shoot with them is very important in my opinion. So you have 2 Dark Lenses, 1 disintegrator cannon. They're getting a little bit of anti-infantry and a little bit of anti-tank. Here, for the Ravager, you're going to use most of your power from pain tokens or pain tokens to roll hits to ensure that your Dark Lenses are going to hit their mark. And yeah, the rest of the pain tokens are just going to be used for your Cabalite Warriors. Those are the 2 key units that you're going to focus on with your pain tokens. And yeah, that's basically it. Overall, the units and the loadouts are scaled a little bit back from what would be optimal, but that's absolutely fine considering how good the rules are, how good the list is. And even though the loadout is not optimal, there are a lot of stratagems to support the weapons that they have. So you have a little bit of a better chance at hitting with your army rule. You have a little bit better of a chance to inflict more damage with a stratagem that is going to give your Cabalite Warriors sustained hits 1 and so on. So you have a ton of options in there. And yeah, it's just a great list to play with and you have a ton of options. So now that we know the loadouts and the army, let's talk about the rules. First up, we have our army rule called Power from Pain. This one rewards you pain tokens, 1 at the start of the game, 1 each time an enemy unit is destroyed, and 1 each time an enemy unit fails a battle shock test. And you can use those pain tokens to reroll advance and charge rolls, or to reroll the hit roll. And that is going to be incredibly helpful, simply because even though your Drukhari are fairly good at hitting, getting a reroll on that is a great increase for their efficiency, and it is going to help you potentially fish for those 6s that are somewhat required, somewhat not required. But still, it's a decent army ability overall. Then we have our enhancements. There are 2 of them, as always. Those are going to go on your Archon that is in this particular box, and they read as follows. First up, you have the Shadow Worm Bottle. This one reads, while the bearer is leading a unit, models in that unit have the Feel No Pain 5-up ability. And this list, the entire list setup in this box is incredible already, but the rules team didn't stop there, and the first enhancement already is insane. So your Cabalite Warriors are usually very squishy. We are talking about toughness 3, a 4-up save, and then they just die because they have 1 wound. But them being able to just sit in a Raider until it gets destroyed, and then still have a 5-up Feel No Pain ability once they get out of there is incredible. Also, you're going to make use of the 5-up Feel No Pain ability whenever you drop them at an objective, and to just sticky it, and then you're going to get shot at inevitably, and that one helps there as well. So overall, a great default enhancement, just effective all the way through, and yeah, just amazing to see. And then we have Spiteful Predator. The bearer's unit is eligible to shoot and declare a charge in a turn in which it fell back. This one is also helpful, but for different matchups. I think whenever you expect to play against a fairly melee heavy army, this one could help, but only if you expect that melee heavy army to be able to take out your Raider. If not, or if you think that it's going to take them at least until turn 4 to destroy your Raider, I would still just pick the default enhancement simply because it's that good. a Feel No Pain of 5-up is just incredible. And yeah, I don't think that Spiteful Predator can really keep up. There are some matchups for the optional enhancement, and you can try and experiment with it a little bit. But yeah, most of the time, I would say in 90% of the matchups, just go with the default enhancement and you're going to have a great time. As far as secondary objectives go, both are pretty good. We have Suspicious Raiders. This one reads, at the end of your turn, you score 3 victory points if one or more Drukhari units from your army, excluding battle-shocked units, are wholly within your opponent's deployment zone. If one or more of those units are infantry units, you score 4 victory points instead. Now, I'm going to admit that this one is not as easy to achieve as some other secondary objectives, but with your vehicles and with your raider, you can definitely manage to do that. I would only pick this one against armies that have a weak board presence. And that means basically any army that isn't orcs or tyrannids or any army that has a lot of separate small units. If you're playing against, for example, Adeptus Custodes, where the Sisters of Silence quickly die, if you're playing against the Grey Knights, and so on, you're going to have a great time picking this one. Against any horde army, you are first going to have to mow those hordes down, and it is going to take a long time. Then you're going to have to fly past them, and then you're going to have to try and establish a safe position on their home objective, which is not as easy as it sounds. So you're definitely going to have to take a look at the matchup and make an educated guess whether this one is going to help you in this particular game or not. And then your optional secondary objective is Murderous Monster. At the end of the fight phase, you score 3 victory points if your Archon model destroyed one or more enemy models that phase. Also, depending on the loadout of your Archon, and as you know, they only have a pistol, it's not going to be that easy to actually achieve that from a safe distance. The pistol only has a 12-inch range, so doing that from a raider is fairly difficult. What your Archon does is melee. It has 5 attacks, you're hitting on 2s, strength 3, AP -2, damage 2, has anti-infantry 3 up though, so most of the things, most infantry is at least going to die. One model, definitely dead. Usually you're going to mow through Space Marines with this one, to be completely honest. So that one, not as easy to achieve as I would like. I think it is doable, especially if you want to play a little bit more of an offensive list, and especially with the Feel No Pain that your Archon gives, you could definitely consider shooting with your Cabalite Warriors and then moving in for just to clear things up, and just let your Archon attack first all of the time, so you get that kill and you get those victory points. So while I wouldn't rate both of those secondary objectives 10 out of 10 or anything, I still think that both of them are pretty viable and pretty useful. I think Suspicious Raiders and getting past your enemy lines is definitely something that is doable, especially considering just the sheer speed that you have on your side. Consider that a Raider has a 14-inch movement, a Ravager has a 14-inch movement, and just moving them over there shouldn't be any trouble at all. And then you have Murderous Monster whenever you think that you're going to be safe in melee against your opponent's army, and you're going to be able to move in fairly quickly. This includes, for example, the Tau Combat Patrols. Both of them, I think, their Murderous Monster is going to be excellent, simply because they have no way of fighting back, effectively at least. And then there are a couple of other Combat Patrols where I think that you could do good, simply because they are very squishy. Like most of the Genestealer cults still have Toughness 3, just basic Guardsmen from the Astra Militarum Combat Patrol, and so on. So if you wanted to play very offensively, you can definitely do that. And last but not least, we have our stratagems. First up, we have Quicksilver Reactions for 1 command point. You use it in your opponent's shooting or fight phase, and you just target 1 Drukhari infantry unit, and until the end of the phase, each time an attack targets your unit, subtract 1 from the hit roll. So not only are your Drukhari going to have a 4-up save, a toughness 3, which is admittedly bad, and 1 wound, they're also going to have a 5-up Feel No Pain, and they're going to have sometimes a -1 to hit for your opponent. So yeah, if you think that your Cabalite Warriors are going to die fairly quickly just because of their stat line, that is definitely not the case. Then we have Many Cuts. It's also 1 command point. In your shooting or fight phase, you target 1 Drukhari infantry unit, and until the end of the phase, weapons equipped by models in your unit have the Sustained Hits 1 ability while targeting a unit that is below its starting strength. Achieving this is very easy, and Sustained Hits 1 is no joke. In the new detachment, there is also a stratagem that grants you sustained hits 1 or sustained hits 2 with your Cabalite warriors, and it slaps. And this one does as well. I've played dozens of games with this combo patrol, and many cards as well as Quicksilver reactions are both excellent stratagems that are top tier in my book. So yeah, both of them you're going to use a lot. And this is one of the combo patrols, and I know I say that a lot, but don't use any command rerolls at all. Unless it's the most important Dark Lens shot of your life and it is going to destroy a Hellbrute or something very, very important, I would never ever use a command reroll with this particular combo patrol. Your stratagems are just so good that it's a complete waste. And last but not least, we have the Dare and Gone stratagem for 1 command point. At the end of your opponent's fight phase, you can use 1 Drukhari infantry model from your army that is not within engagement range of any enemy units, and 1 friendly transport model. Your infantry unit can embark within that transport model, and every model in your infantry unit must be within 3 inches of the transport to be able to embark, and so on. So what this does is it helps you to sticky those objectives and get back into your transport safely should you have the need to. Now what's important to understand here is that this is not a get out of jail for free card, because it sounds really strong at first, but then if you read the when descriptor at the end of your opponent's fight phase, you're quickly going to realize that it is not going to kind of cover you from charges. This is not going to get you out of sticky situations fairly quickly. The one thing it's going to do is it is going to protect your Cabalite warriors from getting shot at directly. Instead, they are going to be able to embark, and then your raider is going to be the target instead of your Cabalite warriors. This does not protect you from charges or melee and so on. You need to stay clear of that, and that is definitely counterplay against your particular combo patrol. But overall, it's still a great stratagem. Just being able to sticky an objective and get back into the transport and just move on really quickly is going to help out a lot. It's going to score you a lot of points, and it is overall a very efficient way to move with your army. So overall, what is there to say? Except for the secondary objectives, I think all of the rules are 10 out of 10 top tier. The stratagems are all really good. The enhancements are really good. Power from Pain and the Pain tokens are a little bit of a mixed bag, but I think being able to reroll hit rolls across the board is going to be very useful. Being able to reroll a charge roll here or there is going to maybe be relevant for your incubi, and overall it gives you a couple of options, so it's not bad at all. And as far as the secondary objectives go, while I don't think that they're as top tier as the rest of the rules, I still think that they're mediocre and a solid middle of the pack kind of thing. They're going to score you approximately 6 to 7 victory points per game, which is, I think, average. Some of the combo patrols these days have an easy time scoring 12. So if you're playing against those, definitely make sure to have your opponent explain their secondary objectives to you so you can counterplay, try to prevent them as best as possible. And then you're going to win your games because you have just so much firepower, so much efficiency on your side, and so much just sheer power from your rules that there is, yeah, basically not a lot of combo patrols that can really keep up with this one. Next up, let's take a quick look at the list. It is 455 points, probably shown this one earlier. It is average these days when it comes to combo patrols. Back in the day, 455 points was definitely a little bit more on the lower side, but these days it is more or less average. Most of the combo patrols are going to be between 400 and 500 points, usually closer to the 400 point mark, so it's not a bad box as far as that goes. As far as the weapons go and so on, you obviously should equip all of them with the loader that you prefer. As I said, no one's going to care how your units are equipped, as long as you're going to focus the datasheet and the rules that I described there. So overall, it's not the most points that you're going to get out of a combo patrol, but as I said earlier a couple of times, the list itself is almost perfect. Now, as far as the savings and the pricing goes, it is basically always the same as far as the pricing goes, but the savings are top tier. We are talking about A+. There are some combo patrols that are better, some even closer to 50%, but still, 39% is nothing to scoff at. I think it's an excellent value for what you're getting. The Ravager especially, I think, is these days GW only. So you're going to be paying always close to that price that you can see here. Some stores still have a 5% discount on these models, but yeah, the Ravager is just not printed that much anymore. The Raider, meanwhile, Incubi, Cabalite Warriors, and so on are evergreens, so GW is still selling them through third-party stores. But all in all, 39% is excellent. And yeah, There's really not much more to add here. It's just a great value of savings. And the cool thing is that even though the Archon is not that popular and so on, with the new Sky Splinter detachment, you are going to have use of 3 Archons. So even though, you know, you might be considering picking this box up multiple times, or even though you might already have an Archon or 2, you know, getting this box still holds value. So when talking about upgrades, let's talk about if this box is worth getting 2 times. And honestly, you have the list here. I didn't equip all of the Cablite Warriors with all of the different weapons because that would make the list unnecessarily longer. But I'm going to be honest with you, yes, buying this box twice is worth it, especially with the new detachment. Having 2 Archons, no matter the model, if it's good or bad in your eyes, is good. You can kit bash it, you can change the Archon model, it's no problem at all, and it's very doable. But overall, having 2 Archons is very useful, having 3 of them still useful, and the rest of the box is just exactly what you need for your Sky Splinter Assault, except for maybe the Incubi. Having 2 Ravagers, always useful, anti-vehicle, more or less very cheap Dark Lances on a very good platform. So having 3 of them down the line, 2 in this case, very good. Raiders, you want to kind of have as many Raiders and Venoms as possible and stuff them full with Cablite Warriors, if possible, with the new detachment. So that is great. So there's basically no downside of getting 2 Combat Patrols, like absolutely none. Back in the day, I would have said that the downside is getting a second Archon. The model is not that optimal and it's not that good looking in my opinion. But yeah, it is what it is. An Archon is not an expensive model, 19 pounds and local equivalent. So it doesn't matter too much. These days, you have actual use for that Archon and it makes it that much more valuable. So just to show you how good this Combat Patrol is, I've made a 2000 points list with 3 Combat Patrols with a Sky Splinter Assault detachment, and it actually plays very well. It is not a tournament list or anything, but I'm fairly certain you could go pretty far in a tournament with this list. So what you have here is Drazar, just to have kind of a unit to lead some of your Incubi. You have Lilith Hesperex, simply because I wanted to diversify a little bit and add a little bit more of a melee touch with Witches. I think Lilith Hesperex with Witches is pretty good. And considering all the transports you have, it is going to be very effective to deliver them. Then you're going to have 3 Archons. All of these are going to get attached to Cablite Warriors. You can also split them up with your dedicated transports. We're going to talk about that in a second. Then we have 2 Talos. I would have wanted to include a 3rd one simply because they are so points efficient and so strong. But this particular list just didn't have enough points to squeeze in another one. And as far as the vehicles go, it is exactly what you expect. We have 3 Ravagers from our 3 Combat Patrols, with 3 Raiders, and what I've added are 2 Venoms. Now the Venoms serve the simple purpose that they are going to add flexibility to your list. And what that means is that you can include a unit of 10 Cablite Warriors into a Venom that allows you to then split them up into units of 5 and, you know, have 2 units of 5 Cablite Warriors into Venoms, and then you can use them to go on objectives, hold objectives, contest objectives, and just fly around and have them be super annoying. And that's what makes Venoms excellent. The rest, everything else from your infantry is going to go into a Raider, and all of your basic infantry except for your Incubi are going to be within transports. Now delivering the Incubi is going to be a little bit more of a challenge with this particular list, but I think it is doable considering how important your Raiders are and how important for your opponent it is to take out those Raiders as quickly as possible. I just don't think they're going to be able to focus that much on your Incubi, especially if you make use of cover and so on. That they are still a fairly quick unit and you still have options to, you know, move in there, charge, and so on. So overall, I think this list works well. I've played this list 2 times in total. I've won 2 games against fairly strong lists. So overall, buying the Combat Patrol 2 or 3 times is worth it. It just works well. I don't usually recommend just, you know, going out there and buying a Combat Patrol 3 times. But if you wanted to go hard on Drukhari and if you wanted to really get to 2000 points fairly quickly, this is definitely the way to go. And as I said earlier, the chance of us getting a comparable Combat Patrol the next time around, once the new codex rolls around, is almost impossible. If I had to take a wild guess, I think that the new Combat Patrol is going to be fairly close to the start collecting, with 1 additional unit attached on there. And that's going to be the Combat Patrol, I would guess. So yeah, we're going to have to wait and see as far as that goes. But just looking at the other Combat Patrols, I don't think you're ever going to see a Ravager in a Combat Patrol again. So this is probably the last chance to get it for a discount, I would guess, unless it's going to be in a battle force. And it's basically one of the best combo patrols out there. There's really not much more to add here. Now, there are no real notes here for Crusade or for boarding actions, simply because for boarding actions, this list and the Drukhari in general, I feel like are not a good match. You're obviously running a Raider in here and a Ravager, and you want to run only infantry in boarding actions, and that means that this particular combo patrol just doesn't lend itself to being used in boarding actions. It just doesn't fit there, and you're going to have to buy a lot more other models, at which point you could just buy things separately if you want to buy Drukhari specifically for boarding actions. This box is just not that great for that. As far as just narrative and Crusade goes, it is a fairly universal list. You can basically do whatever you want with it. It's a great starting point. I think an Archon makes for a great first starting choice, simply because I feel like Archon in Drukhari society stand a little bit above a Succubus and a Homunculus. So having that being your warlord and your first leader choice to lead your entire army and to expand that army makes a ton of sense. The models you're getting are all great. The first few Cabalite warriors you're getting, the Incubi you're getting, so a little bit of support from melee and so on, as I said, is great. And you can expand it to whatever you want. You can lead into any specific sub-faction. You can go all in on Cabalites. You can mix and match a little bit when it comes to witches or a Homunculus Coven, and you can expand wherever you want. So as far as narrative goes, I think this is one of the most flexible and best combo patrols out there, simply because the list is fairly good and fun to play. It makes sense as a starting point, simply because the Archon, as I said, from a narrative perspective, makes sense as your warlord. And the first few units you're getting are the absolute baseline that you need for almost any Drukhari army, and having them at the very start is a great point. So overall, not that good for boarding actions, or actually kind of useless for boarding actions, but pretty good for Crusade. So let's move over to the final rating and the conclusion. First up, we are going to be talking about value and savings. Here I'm going to give it a 9 out of 10, simply because there are some combo patrols that are in the 50% savings category, which is way higher and deserves the 10 out of 10. Here we are getting a 9 out of 10 simply because you are still saving way above the 30 to 33%, and it is incomparable to any of the new combo patrols simply because it's that much better. So I think a 9 here is warranted. As far as beginner friendliness goes, I'm going to give this one a 9 as well. It is not an easy faction to first play and learn and pick up, but after 1 or 2 games, you get the hang of it and you're going to play it just as it should be played. So the first 1 or 2 games are going to be more or less a disaster. After that, you're going to have a lot of fun and you're going to know exactly how and when to move your units. I'm going to deduct 1 point, not because it's a slightly more complex army to play, but rather because some of the models in there are fairly annoying to assemble, especially the Raider and the vehicles are not that easy to assemble. So yeah, I'm just deducting 1 point simply because it felt like it is a slightly more complex army and some of the models in there are not as easy to assemble as I would have wished for. So it is what it is. Take it for what you will. The rules are a 9 out of 10. I'm deducting 1 point for the secondaries. They are not optimal and thus not deserving of a 10 out of 10. The rest of the rules are just amazing and thus I'm giving it a 9. Value for veterans at ease of expansion, straight 9. You can buy this combo patrol 3 times. Don't worry about it. If you're a veteran, if you have 1, 2 Archons, if you have 1 or 2 squads of Cabalite warriors, you may even have 5 Raiders. And this box is still worth it because you can have a 6th one. That's how good this box is. This should actually be a 10 out of 10, actually, now that I think about it. Screw that. It's not 9 out of 10, it's 10 out of 10. It's just that good. Then usefulness for other formats is a 6 out of 10. I think it's that good for Crusade, where it kind of offsets a little bit that it's completely useless for boarding actions. So I'm just going to give it a 6 here. I think that's fair. And yeah, overall, this is going to bring us to 43 points. That is the highest, I think, or one of the highest values I've ever given for any combo patrol. I think this one is deserving of it. It's one of the best combo patrols out there. If you've ever been thinking about playing Drukhari, now's the time to pick this one up. Play Drukhari. And I'm also saying this a little bit because I want GW to know that Drukhari are not a faction that has few players and that is unpopular. It's a great faction. Visual design, even though their models are over 10 years old, Cabalite warriors and so on, you wouldn't notice it. If I wouldn't have told most of the people that, you know, Cabalite warriors are from, what, 2009, 2010, they wouldn't have noticed, simply because the models are so damn good. And yeah, just the rules are great, the army itself is great, and I'm kind of expecting them to be the big bad in 11th edition, which would be excellent, because they need not a range refresh, but they need a new kind of roster. They need new models, they need new grotesques and so on. They had a lot of resin pieces in their army, and all of those have gone away, and those need replacing. I think all of their current infantry, I think their raiders, their current vehicles, Talos models, their flyers are all still excellent looking and do not need replacing. What they need is an expanded roster, and that's that. So yeah, the Drukhari, I'm a huge fan. This Combat Patrol, definitely one I recommend strongly. And even if you don't see yourself playing a full Drukhari army, you want to just pick it up for Combat Patrol, it's an excellent buy. So overall, very positive on this one. And as I said earlier in the video, if you have any questions, if you've noticed anything and you want to just talk about stuff for the Drukhari Combat Patrol or anything, drop that down in the comments below. Helps the algorithm. I'll gladly talk to you about the Combat Patrol and so on. As far as future Combat Patrol videos go, I'm probably going to cover Genestealer cults next, depending on how the comments go. If I've noticed any kind of Combat Patrol being noticed in the comments a lot, I might consider pushing that one forward, simply because, yeah, there's demand for it, and why not make a video about it. And I'm going to make way more Spearhead and Combat Patrol content moving forward. So if you're an AOS player as well, if you have too much money on your hands, definitely consider subscribing. There's a lot more content to come. And yeah, it's just a fun time currently to be a Warhammer player. 10th edition, while not perfect, is still great fun. Combat Patrol is probably one of the best formats that GW could have come up with. And Spearhead is going to follow suit for Age of Sigmar. So a lot of fun times ahead of us. And with that, I hope this video was insightful, and I hope to see you in the next one. Thank you so much for watching. Take care.